5 or 10 minutes talking about my project or something like interesting things. It's really depends on the your personal experiment or your job or something like that. So also we are still open for the apply to speaking LT. So if you wanna join, let me know. And then we're gonna introducing about funding the Commons Tokyo, which is one of the biggest event about public goods. You know public goods? That's good. So yeah, we're gonna introduce it to you about this one later. So alright, so back to the about this event. So this event is the fully organized by non-profit contributor like me and us and everyone. So sometimes it's trouble. Please, contribute. So this event is the maybe you guys already know about Glen Weyl, who is the economist of the and author of the Radical Market. That's the one of the book. Also, Glen Weyl recently writing a Plural magazine, which is the one of the organized by DAO, Decentralized Autonomous Organization. They are working on the GitHub with Audrey Tang, who is the digital minister of Taiwan. Also with Vitalik, who is a founder of Ethereum. So we got to know each other last week. I went to the UC Berkeley to participate the Plurality Research Institute conference. And then Glen met me about I'm gonna go Tokyo January. So he coming here at 2 p.m. Then we're gonna start talk session with the special guest. Dear special guest, yeah, welcome. All right, so let's get started. First, we introduce about the Yoshiro, who is the, how can I say, like, I love him because his scrapbooks is the really insightful everything, but almost written in Japanese. But he gonna introduce about language plurality. As you already know, we basically using a Japanese language, but almost Asian people are using English, you guys know. So also, the Audrey Tang is using a Mandarin, which is the Taiwanese language. So it's time to rethinking about how language to like changing our thinking or our idea or something like that. So also, I forgot to say, please tweet your opinion, your idea with Glen in Japan, hashtag Glen in Japan on Twitter. So we're gonna retweet by Plurality Tokyo official account. So yeah, feel free to chat. All right, so let's get started by Yoshiro. Yay!
Hi, I'm Yoshiro. I made this slide in English, but I think the most of audience are Japanese, so I speak in Japanese. The English materials can download from this link. And これ今からじゃあというわけで日本語で話すんですけれども、事前にグレンワイルに共有したらこのスライドめっちゃお気に入りの一つだって言ってたので、すごく面白い話をするので楽しみにしてください。ライトニングトーク10分の予定だったんですけれども、割と人が少ないようなので、まとめに話すのはドリブルでやっていきたいと思います。というわけで、西尾弘和です。よろしくお願いします。簡単に自己紹介させてください。僕はサイボーズロボットでサイボーズという会社ご存知かアメリカと思いますけど、サイボーズという会社の研究部門で研究員をしています。で、サイボーズってセリングプロダクティビティソフトウェアカンパニーなんですけれども、これ何から取ってきてるかというと、プロラリティブックのセクション64から取ってきているので、まだ読んだことない人はぜひ読んでみると、あ、この話してたんだなって後で思ってください。で、このサイボーズの 企業ミッション何なのかっていうと、これが、ね、チームワークあふれる社会を作るなんですね。おっと、もっとゆっくり話してほしいですという、ユニットが見せている、じゃあゆっくり話しましょう。なかなか難しい、テンションが上がっている時にゆっくり話すというのはなかなか難しい話があるんですけれども、チームワークあふれる社会を作るということをミッションにしてグループレアを作っている会社なんですね、サイボーズっていうのは。で、そこで研究員として僕どういう研究をしているかと言いますと、簡単に言うと知的生産性の増強をしています。このエンジニアの知的生産術という本、順駆動でトップ10に入ってたことがあるのでご存知の方も多いかと思うんですけれども、この本の著者です。で、じゃあなぜ個人の知的生産性の向上がチームワークあふれる社会につながるのかというと、なぜかというと、個人の知的生産性の向上が良いチームワークの礎であるからなんですね。というふうな感じのことをとりあえず自己紹介させていただきます。で、じゃあこれがどうつながってくるのかという話をここからなるべくゆっくりと喋っていきたいと思います。はい、で僕とプルライティの出会い、プルライティが分かんない人のために念のため説明しますと、大分とグレンとが書きつつある、プロライティという名前の本があります。この本の話をしています。で、この本の、プリケースとかは高いタイトルが記しているんですけれども、テクノロジーとコラボラティブ・ダイバーシティ・デモクラシーっていうサブタイトルを見て、テクノロジー、コラボラティブ・ダイバーシティ、これってチームワークあふれる社会を作るための技術の話だよねってなったんですね、これを見たときに。これがまず1個目の、これ僕のための本じゃねっていうところで、次にその本を読み進めていったら何書いてあったかというと、ブロードリスニングっていう概念が出てきます。このブロードリスニングってどういうものなのかというと、人々が大勢の仲間の意見の分布を把握する技術なんですね。これはあることによって何が良くなったかというと、大規模で民主的な大勢の人がちゃんとしっかりと議論に参加する民主主義っていうのが可能になるわけなんですっていう話が書いてあるんですね、この本の中に。で、それを見たときに、大勢の意見を理解する能力を増強する技術だね。つまりこれ、人間の知的生産性の向上だよねっていう、まさにこれ、僕のやりたかったことにすごくフィットしている本じゃないかってなったわけなんです。で、それがテンションが上がった。で、テンションが上がったのでどうしたかというと、日本語翻訳フォーラムを作りました。こちらにあります。皆さん参加できます。先ほどのリンクがたどれるので、ぜひ参加していただけるとありがたいと思います。で、どういう仕組みになっているかというと、そもそも論としてこの本の原稿というのが今 GitHub 上で、オードリーとかグレンとかリダイクとかが GitHub にプッシュするっていう仕組みになっている。で、そのプッシュされた GitHub の、原稿を僕が書いたプログラムが1日1回チェックして、で更新があったらそれをGPT3.5 の API を叩いて翻訳して GitHub に突っ込むという GitHub アクションが実装してあって、毎日なので例えば昨日オードリー隊が新しい書を書いたとすると、次の日には皆さん日本語訳が読めるという仕組みが作ってあります。で、なのでぜひこれを見ていただきたい。で、このシステムっていうのがここで翻訳を改善していった結果が最終的にプロライティ .net っていうそのプロライティの公式のサイトのところに集約していくという仕組みになっているわけなんですね。で、これを作った後で思ったんですよ。これだけじゃ足りないと、何が必要かというと、日本人が日本語でこの本の原稿を見て、これってどういうことだろうねみたいな感じで議論をお互いにやり合って知識を深め合う場っていうのを作る必要がある。なので、これフリーディスカッションができる場所が必要というわけでフォーラムを作りました。それが先ほどちらっとお見せしたスラックボックス上のフォーラムです。さて、Good understanding is the foundation of good translation。良い翻訳をする前に良い理解を培う必要があると思っているんですね。で、これをやっていくために本の翻訳っていうプロジェクトは大きすぎるんですよ。ゴールが遠すぎるんですよ。なぜかというと、まずそもそもの本の原稿が固まってないからなんですね。いつ完成するのかみたいな感じになって、なんか本の翻訳プロジェクト走ってるっていうけども原稿固まってないのにどうやって参加したらいいんだろうなと思ってる方もいっぱいいると思うんですよ。なので、そうではなくて、じゃあどこにフォーカスするかというと、この本を翻訳するということが目的なんじゃなくて、この本に書かれている内容をみんながよりよく理解することが目的なのです。じゃあそれのために何が必要かって考えたときに、本の内容を限定しないで、もっと周辺的な普通にリンクしているそういうマテリアルをどんどん訳していく方がいいだろうなということをやってます。で、具体的にどういうことをやってるかというと、つい先月にプロライティソウルというのがあったんですね。ソウルでプロライティのイベントがあって、オードリーさんとかグレンワイルとかが投稿したと。で、その遠くの動画とかの、日本語の、字幕をつけたりとか翻訳したりとかスライドの、翻訳したりとかそういうのをしています。現時点では、オードリーターンのスライド、遠くの動画に関してはコードフォージャパンのチャンネルから、僕のつけた字幕がついて見れる状態になっていて、これは プロライティに関して斬新な面白い話なので、ぜひそれを見ていただけるといいかなと思います。ちなみに、自己紹介側に、プロライティ登場の時の、踊りたのキーノートスピーチを訳したのも僕ですという感じですね。はい、じゃあ、ここで、どうすればより良い理解っていうのは培うことができると思いますが、なんか10分の予定のものを長く引き伸ばしながら言ってしゃべるの結構しんどいんですよ。皆さんご理解ください。でね、これ何をする必要があるかというと、知識のネットワークを作っていく必要があると僕は思っています。その知識のネットワークって何なんだって思う人も多いと思うんですね。じゃあ具体例を出してみましょう。これ、そのプロライティソウルでのブレーンの遠くのスライドの一つです。この真ん中の絵何でしょう。これ何の絵か分かる人。はい、手を挙げる人がほぼいないので誰も分かんないということが分かった。で、日本人シャイだから手を挙げないだけかもしれないんだけど、分かんない。じゃあこれをそのスクラップブックのフォーラムに行くとリンクが貼ってある。そのページにリンクが貼ってある。インフィニットデフィニダイバーシティにインフィニットコンビネーション。これなんだろうなって言って読んでいくと、スタートスポック 2.22 をインフィニットバルコニー、こんな感じで出てくる言葉なんだ。つまりこれなんだな。で、これスタートレックなわけです。で、スポークがつけている。ここについてよく見てみると、さっきのマークじゃん。要するにグレンはスタートレックでは通じると思ってあれ書いてる。通じると思ってるかどうかそれじゃないですけど、あれを書いてスタートレックのことを示唆してるんですけど、その文脈が分かってない人はその知識のリンクがつながらないですね。はい、なのでこういうのを、分かる人がつなげたり、自分が分かんないから調べた時に調べて分かった新しく分かったことを書いておくことによって他の人たちの助けになる。これね、バネマブッシュが言ったことなんですけど、2つのアイテムをリンクする、つなげるということが大事なんだと、知識をねやっていく上で。で、それはなぜかというと、興味関心インタレストの通った筋道筋っていうのがそうやってビルドされて溜まっていくからで、それを溜めていくことによってその道筋っていうのは消えないものになっていく。頭の中だけで考えてると時間経つと消えちゃうし、他の人にシェアできない。これがシェアされることによって消えていかない共有団になるわけです。つまりこれが道なんですよ。ある意味インフラストラクチャーをこうグッと話したんですよ。皆さんの理解をより良くするための道がここで作られつつあるということです。で、この道ができることによって後から来る人の移動が楽になるんですね。道があると皆さん道がないところと道があるところどっちがある気がついたら道があるところがある気がするじゃないですか。それと同じで理解のための道を作っておくことによって後から来る人の理解が助けられる。これこそがそのインフラストラクチャーをグッとアンダースタンドしたわけです。要するに我々は知識の世界を開拓しているわけですね。これノーアースヒアの開拓のネタです。で、それでこれがインテリメンテーションの協力学習、コラボラティブラーニングってプロライティブポエムの中に出てくるフレーズなんですけど、ピンとこないなと思ってきたこれらが全部リンクつながっているというのをスタートで体感してください。で、面白いオブザベーションがあったんですね。これをやってる、過程で原稿って2種類の言語で書かれてるんですよ。イングリッシュとマンダリンと両方で書かれてるんですけれども、時々マンダリンから直接翻訳した方が英語から翻訳するよりも日本語として自然な訳が出てくることがあるな。これ不思議だなと思ったんですけど、これって要するに日本語と中国語って漢字という共通のキャラクターを持っている。これによって共通の表意文字っていうのが共通の意味を伝えることができる道になってるんですよ。すでにそこに道があった。日本と台湾の間に道があったんですよ。皆さん意識がしてなくて英語から約束のことしか考えてないかもしれないんですけど、この道を通った情報のやり取りすごい有益だと思うので、もっとガンガンやっていくべきじゃないかなというわけでこの絵を描きました。この絵何かというと、日本と台湾とがプロライティ同じ共通の字というものによってつながっているという図です。で、面白いエグザンプル、これプロライティ当時の時にあった話なんですけれども、台湾から来た台湾デジタル庁のセクションオブプロライティというセクションがあるんですけど、その名詞に何て書いてあるかというと多元宇宙化って書いてあるので、多元宇宙化って見たら多元宇宙化かってなるじゃないですか。雰囲気わかるじゃないですか。マジか多元宇宙化っていうのがあるんだ台湾にはみたいな感じの話なんです。あとこれもうちょっと皆さんここにいる方グレンのことが好きだと思うのでグレンの話をすると、グレンの Why I am Pluralist っていう2022年のブログ記事がある。ご存知の方はまあいいや、聞くのはやめておこう。で、これのマンダリンバージョンの翻訳が要するになぜ私は多元宇宙人であるのかみたいな感じのタイトルがついてるわけなんですね。グレンがどうして自分がプロライストであるのかという説明しているブログすごく面白いんですけど、これを読んでいって気づいたことがあるんです。最初に英語で書いてあるのを読んだ時にちょっとピンとこなかったところが、 後から漫画に中国語で書いたのを見たときに、なるほど、そういうことかってなったことがある。つまり、プルラルランゲージ、複数のランゲージであることが、僕のアンダースタンディングよりサポートしている。複数の言語っていうのが、理解の助けになっているということが分かった。これがパワーオブザロードかな。それだけじゃないんですね。これもWhy I am Pluralist と読んだ人はピンときてるんですけれども、プロラルシンキングという章がある。プロラルシンキングの章のところに何書いてあるかというと、ある言語、他の言語よりも特定の考えを表現しやすいという現象がある。これ事実として、これ今グラフ出てるのは、ロシア語にはね、青を表現する単語が2つあるんですよ。英語には1個しかないね、ブルースね。その場合、ロシア人の方がロシア語話者の方が英語話者よりも青い色の識別テストをやったときに早いんですよ。要するに、ある概念をより詳細に説明する語彙を持つ言語の話者っていうのは、その概念をより効率的に扱うことができる。じゃあ日本人何が得意なんだろうって思うわけですね。これね、以前コードフォージャパンで民主的プロセスって何だろうって議論したときに面白い話が出てきたんですけれども、民主的プロセスっていうのはなるべく多くの人に納得感を生み出すプロセスだっていう話をした人がいて、僕はそれを聞いて、なるほど納得するなその説明はって思ったんだけど、これを英語で伝えようと思ったら、納得って英語で何て言うのかなってなったんですよ。納得って英語で何て言う？辞書で調べるとね、納得はアグリーメントもしくはアンダースタンディングだって出てくるんですよ。でもアグリーメントは合意でしょ、アンダースタンディングは理解でしょ、納得に対応するところボイドじゃないっていう、ここに穴開いてないみたいな感じのことになる。これはね、英語の問題じゃないんですよ。全ての言語にはボイドがいっぱいあるんです。で、皆さん一つの単一の言語で考えているとそのボイドに気づくことはできないんです。だから我々は異なる言語の話者とのコラボレーションが必要なわけですね。で、ちなみにジャパンがどういうふうな特徴のある言語なのかっていうと、これエイン・メイヤーの研究による日本のカルチャーがどうなのかっていう図なんですけれども、日本って他の国とかと比べてめっちゃ階層的なのにめっちゃ貿易衛星である変な国なんですね。ここにあるとチャイナがここにあって US がそこにあるんですね。この、カルチャーの違い、カルチャーが違うことによってこのカルチャーの違い、良くないものだなって思っている雰囲気の若い人多分いっぱいいると思うし、僕もそれは同意で海外にもっとガンガン出ていってガンガン自己主張していくことが必要だと僕は思ってるんだけれども、とはいえ我々のその過去の人たちが作ってきたこういう空気、日本の空気を読むであるとか根回しするであるとか、そういうカルチャーを表現することによって生まれてきた語彙、ボキャブラリー、日本語のボキャブラリーっていうのは、これは社会的な調和、ソーシャルハーモニーを表現する上でのとても重要なツールなわけなんですね。なのでこれを輸出していくことが大事だと思う。なぜならば、ある言語は他の言語よりも特定の考えを表現しやすいから。今ブルーライティングと行われようとしているデジタルデモクラシーをどうやっていくかとか、そういうようなことを記述する上で日本語の語彙っていうのはとても有用だというわけです。ちなみに日本語って皆さん日本の中にいると気づいてないかもしれないけど、めっちゃマイノリティなんですよ。中国の第二言語としては学習者よりも少ないんですよ、日本語の話者って。ちなみに日本語のバーのところだけ赤い線ないじゃないですか。日本語の第二言語としての学習者少なすぎてグラフに見えないんですっていうこの状況を理解して、言葉っていうのは公共財だ。この自分たちの持っている言葉を世界にエクスポートして輸出していくことによって、その世界の公共財を増やしていくことをもっとみんなやっていくことが大事だと僕は思っています。で、なので今このプロライティという本が書かれつつあるという話をしました。それが翻訳されつつあるという話をしました。なんか全部終わって翻訳が完了してから読もうとか思うのはやめて、翻訳終わるの待つんじゃなくて、今ここで現れてあなたの言葉が公共財になって、例えば後からその本を読む日本人の助けにもなるかもしれないし、世界の環境の助けにもなるかもしれない、こういうふうな、公共財を増やすという道を引いていくということができるわけです。というわけで一番最後、これで最後のスライドなんですけれども、最後にオールリターンのよく使う中国語のフレーズを紹介させてください。僕発音は苦手なんですけども、海面チャーチャーに新に来みたいな感じのことを言うんですが、これどういうことかというと、門を閉じて車作るんじゃなくて門を開いて車作ります。だからこれに興味がある人はぜひやってきて一緒にやりましょうということを言っているわけです。で、ちなみに、これを、次の1月20日にコードフォージャパンの、ソーシャルハックデーでこの本を読んでいって考えやっていこう的な感じのイベントをやりますので、興味がある人はぜひこれに参加してください。以上で僕の発表は終わりです。ご清聴ありがとうございます。
You good? Yeah, thank you for the talking about language to work by Yoshiro. That's such an insightful. So as Glen was mentioned about language is a common, the language is a public good. Maybe in the his podcast with Kevin Owiki, who is a founder of the Gitcoin. I remember about that. So that's super cool. Yeah. All right. So we are still open to apply for talking in the right-wing talk like this. Also, the both language available like English, Japanese, or Mandarin. Yeah, welcome to apply. Let me know if you wanna talking about your opinion, your experiments. So the next one is the Yomi, who is the working on the bridge post. Bridge post is the one of the curator for the distribution money for the media or influencer or article writer, something like that. So I remember the Glen was mentioned about what is our use case for the crowdfunding. He answered that's the media. Like the media is one of the public goods. In Japanese, maybe some of the NHK or Bukwasto, probably know. That's the one of the national news party. One of the when people is gonna want to be destroyed, that's the media. So, however, maybe you guys remember yesterday, the media is super important. Public media is super important. Like when an earthquake is gonna happen, it's over. If we have already commercial media, that's over, right? So we have to distribute for the money, like public goods, the media. So introducing bridge post by Hiromi. Yeah.
現在その個人が書いた記事とかリサーチっていうのはクリプトのエコシステムの発展において非常に価値があるんですけれども金銭的に報酬を得る方法は限られていて多くの人がボランティアのような形で貢献していますプレッジポストはを可能にするメカニズムです直接寄付された資金に加えてこのメカニズムに従って追加資金がマッチングプールという資金プールから割り当てられますこの仕組みはあるものに対して寄付された総額よりもそれがどのくらいの人々に支持をされているのかっていうところに重きを置いたメカニズムになっていますライターが金銭的に報われることで開発者や初心者の学習リソースが増えてオンボーディングを促進するとともにそのエコシステム上で開発を行ったりトランザクションを発生させることでエコシステムを活性化させることができますこちら映っているのがプレッジポストの仕組みですライターは記事を書いて公開することができますそしてその記事をグラントにアプライすることができます四半期ごとにマッチングプールの資金がクオラティックファンディングのメカニズムに基づいて記事に割り当てられますで読者は各記事に寄付することができます記事は全て無料で読めるんですけど寄付者のみが記事にコメントを残すことができますクリプトプロジェクトはエコシステムを拡大するためにグランドラウンドを開催することができます次お願いしますこちらがプレッジポストのエコシステムモデルになりますコンテンツ作成者は記事を投稿してハイパーサートを作成しますハイパーサートは、データ形式のインパクト証明書で読者は各記事に寄付するとこのハイパーサートをミートできますこのハイパーサートは ERC115 を規格に従った NFT で保有者はただ寄付行為を証明できるだけではなくこの NFT を中心にコミュニティ形成したりハイパーサートの作成者がインセンティブを設定したり今後インパクト市場みたいなものが確立されていったときにカーボンクレジットのように市場で取引可能になる未来もあると考えていますコンテンツ制作者は、クローザテックファンディングメカニズムに基づいてマッチングプールから追加資金を受け取りますマッチングプールの資金源としては今のところそのギットコイン、オプティミズム、オクタントなどのトリックスファンディングのプロジェクトとか、 他のプロジェクトからのスポンサーシップだったり、また、将来的にこれは検討中なんですけど、アップスペシフィックチェーンを構築して、チェーンからのシーケンサーフィンをマッチングツールに流すことも検討しています。次お願いします。私たちはプレスポストには2つの強みがあると考えています。まずプレスポストはライターの収益可能性を高めます。個人のライターはユーザーからの寄付とマッチングプールからの資金という2つの方法で報酬を得ることができます。第2に、寄付者のみがコメントを残すことができる機能です。コメントを寄付者のみに限定することで質の高い議論を促します。また悪質なコメントをする行為に対してもそのコストを強いることができます。次お願いします。私たちのロードマップです。まず現在、アルファ版開発中で、最初のグラントラウンドを実行するための資金を集めています。その後、アルファ版テストして、フィードバックを集めて、これから改善を行っていきます。で、このテストを何回か繰り返した後に、特定のプロジェクトとのコラボレーションをして、その特定のエコシステム特化のラウンドを開催したり、あともっとクリプト以外のアカデミックなコミュニティにも
なんかモダンな部屋に見えていて、でもその椅子の位置とかテーブルの位置は同じに見えるみたいな、こんなもん VR 空間が作れるみたいなのが想像できると思います。あるいはなんかVR の世界でご飯を一緒に食べているけど、なんかそれがけどなんか自分には中華を食べているように見えていて、相手にはフレンチを食べているように見えるみたいな、そういうことが VR で可能だと思います。そういうその客観的な現実と主観的な現実の間、客観的な現実の問題っていうのはそれぞれにあったこうやって最適化ができないっていうこと。例えば言語の問題でとっても自分には英語に聞こえるけど相手には日本語に聞こえるみたいな、そういうことができない。でも主観的な現実っていうのはもう他人がいない世界なので、それは他者とのコラボレーションがもう全くない世界。これはプラリティの目指す世界では全くないというふうに思います。なのでその2つの間を考えられないかということに興味を持ってそういった研究をしています。でせっかくなのでそれに関連する研究をいくつか紹介すると多分もう数分話してちょうどいい時間なんじゃないかなというふうに思います。なので一つこれは面白い動画が面白いんです。せっかくなんで紹介してるんですけど、これはその2人の人間が VR 空間にいるけど全然違うものが見えているみたいな、そういったものですね。この1人のユーザーにとっては釣りをしているように見えているんですけど、でVR 空間でこの釣りをやっているように思っている釣りをやっている1人の VR ユーザーがいて、こんな感じですね。でそうこうしている間にもう1人別の VR のプレイヤーがいて、その別の VR プレイヤーっていうのは別の VR プレイヤーっていうのはタコで遊ぶゲームをやっています。こんな感じでタコに振り回されながら必死に引っ張っています。で、それは現実界ではこんなふうにいます。で、これは実はどうなっているかというと、この2人のプレイヤーが1人は釣りをやっていて、もう1人はタコをやっていて、お互いに引っ張り合っているという、そういう現実が作られているみたいな話があったりします。これとか結構サブジェクティブリアリティの方にとても近いとは思うんですけど、一部のリアリティの一部を共有しながらリアリティの一部は共有しないみたいな、そういった VR の作り方が成り立っているんじゃないかなというふうに思います。あるいはもう少し実用的かつリアリティを共有しているような例だとこういったものがあって、これ動画がない、これじゃないな、じゃあこれにしよう。18+ リアリティっていう研究があって、これはこれはリアリティの中の時間タイムをエイシメトリックな形にしているというふうなものだというふうに思っています。何が起きるかというと、一人の人間がVR 空間で作業していて、こんなふうに集中して作業しているとします。でその集中しているところにこの別の女性が入ってきて、こうやって部屋に入ってきて物を置きます。で話しかけるんですけど、その行動自体はこの集中している人には見えないようになっています。入ったタイミングではこの時間というのは共有されていなくて、集中している人にとっては何も見えない世界になっています。でこの入ってきて物を置いたという動作をいつ この集中している人が見えるかというと、この一旦集中をやめようと思って外の世界を見たタイミングでこのものに触れたタイミングでその過去が再現されるみたいな形になっていて、この時間を超えて時間を共有するみたいな、そういう現実の時間を共有していないけどバーチャルリアリティにおける時間を、エイシメトリックな形で共有しているみたいな、そういった VR 空間が作れたりします。とか、あるいはこれと同じことを空間でも考えられて、なんか自分と相手は別の異なった広さの部屋にいるけど、なんか同じコミュニケーションを取れるみたいな、そういったことがいろいろ考えられると思っています。そんな感じで現実のズレ、エイシメトリーを作りながらコミュニケーションを成り立たせるみたいな、個別最適化と他者とのコミュニケーション、他者との現実の共有っていうのを両立する技術っていうのがプラディティを目指すような世界で大事なのじゃないかなというふうに思っています。で、最後に、このオードリー・タンの、ちょっとさっきのスライドでも出たんですけど、このオードリー・タンのこの詩なのかな、でも研究されているこの When we see virtual reality, let's make it a shared reality っていうの、これはまさに今話した話ともつながることだと思っていて、バーチャルリアリティ、ここで言ってるバーチャルリアリティっていうのはまさに先ほど言ったようなサブジェクティブリアリティのようなあまり他人がリアリティを共有していないような世界を想定したと思っていますが、そうではなくて他人と現実を共有しながらもバーチャルリアリティの個別最適化ができるという良さも保ち続けるみたいな、そのアイデアを取るようなテクノロジーがこのプラリティを目指す上で大事なのではないかなというふうに思っています。すごい直感工事で作ったスライドでしたが、以上でありがとうございました。
ありがとうございます。まだかかりそうなので、私も発表していいですか。はい。これか。
Thank you for everyone to participate this event. Maybe you guys already know the Glen Weyl is here. Woo! Woo! So we're gonna introduce our first special guest from Japan, Matushima, who is a chief editor of Wired Japan magazine. I was in Wired Japan last year. Please mainly focus on the underrated, what is a plurality, also the maybe almost Web3 conversation is focus on the price, right? The trading, that's hyping. But basically the Wired is focused on the how we can use blockchain technology, how improving our society with the plurality stuff. That's amazing things. So we invite, that's the reason. Also the Hayashi, who is one of the entrepreneur, mainly focus on the government, local government area. The next common level, which is the, how can I say, like working with the public sector, with the startup guys. Also the, they are trying to implement radical way, like the voting and the funding for public goods or something like that. Maybe you guys know Japanese population is decrease and decrease. That's such a bad situation right now. But we have a potential to revolution for our better institutional mechanism, something like that. Also the Tasaka, who is the officer of the local government in Shibuya. So here is the Shibuya city. That's the most powerful city in Tokyo, I think. So here is a special guest from Japan. Also the Glen Weyl. Maybe you guys already know. Also the Radical Market. Also the writing plurality magazine with Audrey Tan and Richard Britain. So also the founder of the Radical Exchange, which is one of the non-profit organization they are trying to researching the plurality stuff, like quadratic funding, quadratic voting, something like that. Also, the recently New York City has experiment to quadratic funding in the New York City Harlem. That's the maybe first, I don't know. Also, the Taiwanese people is trying to implementing plurality stuff with the community DAO, like a community, local community. Anyway, so welcome to the special guest. Here's the also the Matushima is gonna be moderate their talk session. So enjoy. And do you have any opinion or something like that? You can tweet with Glen in Japan on the Twitter. Yeah, that's all. Welcome to community.
Great. マイクはみんなで回して使う感じですね。
日本しかない。
Yes.
So thank you very much, Glen, for joining us.
My pleasure.
Do you do some presentation?
I'm just getting my presentation at the end.
Okay, great. So, actually, why you are now being in Japan this time? What for?
Well, I was going to Taipei. I've got a big trip in Taipei that will be very interesting. And my family, when they were coming over with me, wanted to see Japan because my daughters have never been to Japan. So,
Oh,
yeah.
that's last time. So that's and actually, it's a really kind of strange timing. It's just national holiday.
Yeah, well, that's
And
why
also
we did this time because actually the cheapest flight of the year to Tokyo from New York is on 12:35 in the morning on New Year's Day. Because no one wants to be flying that time. They all want to be celebrating. And so we flew over 8 time zones with the fireworks. Because it kept changing back and back and back, and from the air we saw the fireworks below us, and then suddenly it was January 2nd, and we landed in Haneda, and 8 hours later a plane exploded there. So we bring good luck to you here in Japan.
Your daughter not afraid of the earthquake? Is she okay?
Yeah, so I actually, when I was 4 years old, I was for the big earthquake they had in San Francisco. So I guess I carry it with me. And so you get the earthquake and the plane explosion, and hopefully many other terrible things will happen to you before I leave. So, okay.
Welcome, yes.
Do you have a slide changer?
No, nothing.
No. Okay, I'll just do it myself.
It doesn't work.
No, it was working fine. It just got disconnected. It'll be fine.
If you can share the slide for the our committee, the senior is gonna be changing the slide.
Okay, yeah. So I'll just point to you when I here. You can change the slide on here. Is that cool?
Yeah.
Okay,
that's
perfect.
right,
Great, wonderful. Should I get started?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's get started.
It's great to be here with you guys in Tokyo. I've been having an amazing time so far. I've probably slept about half of the time I should have slept for the last 5 nights on my way here, and I'm jet lagged 12 hours, so forgive me for that. But I wanted to tell you guys all about this plurality project. And up here on the slide are some of the people who are making this happen from all around the world, a community of people building this common project. And the symbol for it, which I guess they showed over there as well, has a lot of things loaded into it. So the word plurality originates from the fact that these 2 symbols that you can barely see in traditional Mandarin, I don't know if they also have those in kanji, but these mean in Taiwan both plural and digital. And plurality is the attempt to render into English this sort of joining of technology and social philosophy. And the symbols are also a Unicode character. So you can now have an emoji that represents plurality, which is these overlapping squares In this detail, one is circles, the other is squares, and they give birth to this rounded square. And plurality is really all about that. Plurality is about cooperation across difference, and how by bringing people together across differences, we can create beauty and progress and growth. Anyway, I won't tell you who all these people are. You probably recognize some of them. Others, hopefully, you'll come to recognize in coming years. Okay, next slide. So plurality addresses the fact that technology and democracy are kind of on a collision course right now in most of the world. So you read all over the place about how technology is undermining democratic governments by creating extremism, creating silos and divisions and polarization, and spreading misinformation. And at the same time, I think it's important we also acknowledge that many people in the tech world feel that democracy is also at war with technology. They feel that, and with some justice, governments around the democratic world focus overwhelmingly on restricting, regulating, prohibiting the development of certain technologies, and that the governments in democratic countries, which used to invest huge amounts of resources in developing technologies, have increasingly left the development of technologies to the private sector. The percentage of national income that democratic countries are putting into technology development has gone way down. And this contrasts with authoritarian regimes, which are often building giant cities to accommodate driverless cars, and really thinking about the future in this proactive way. Next slide. And our vision is that the reason this is happening is that the two dominant ways of thinking about the future of technology are fundamentally anti-democratic in character. And these two visions are kind of both visions of technology and political visions. One of these we call corporate libertarianism, and this is associated with people like Mark Andreessen, Peter Thiel, Balaji Srinivasan. It's a vision that is about sort of the individual. It's a vision that's about technology as a way to get around and break down social organization, replacing trust with algorithms. And its favorite technologies are like the crypto suite of technologies, privacy-oriented things, etc. Another vision is what we call synthetic technocracy. These terms, by the way, are derived from the game Civilization 6, which I don't know if any of you have played. It's the best-selling strategy game of all time. And in it, there are future governments, and these are the three future governments, and they were derived from this discussion. So another ideology is associated with people like Sam Altman, Reid Hoffman, the AI world, universal basic income, this whole thing. It's like, we're going to make some giant machine, it will do everything for you, and then you can all, just party. That's kind of the vision of it. When I was in college, there was a guy who ran for the president of the student council, the student government, and he said, let the good times roll, keep the good times rolling, and the good stuff like alcohol flowing, while all the hard work is done by this guy whose name was Smolin. And so this is the vision. It's like we all have fun, and the machine manages it. But we think that there's another ideology, another vision that is aligned with democracy, and that actually in pop cultural visions like Star Trek articulated as well as a philosophy. And so we think of these things when we think of the future of technology, and people have been building towards those as a result. And because these are very anti-democratic, they're either hyper-capitalist or hyper-centralized, whereas democracy is about diversity and networks and participation, we therefore have gotten into this conflict between democracy and technology. Next slide. But there's a place where that's not what's happening. There's an island, not so far from here, where democracy and technology have worked hand in hand, where civic technology movement has pushed forward technology development rather than just the private sector or the state, where they've used it to have the world's best performance in addressing COVID, to have the most technology-intensive economic growth, and in a way that's actually reduced inequality over time and reduced capital's share of income. a place where the civil sector has hacked the government and continually upgraded the quality of government services without asking permission from the government to do it. And the government follows and incorporates these things. Where they're having the best in the world performance on addressing pollution and the pollution of the information landscape by a large adversary, using the involvement of the public and ordinary people. Next slide. And this was made possible by, among others, a collaborator of mine, Audrey Tong, the first transgender minister in the world, who, in the wake of the occupation of their national legislature in 2014, think about that. January 6th in the United States, they came in to the national legislature for 3 hours. Think of what a trauma that was for the country. These people were 24 times as long. More than that. More than 100 times as long. 3 weeks they occupied the national legislature. How traumatic that was for Taiwan. And yet, using these tools, they found a way to build consensus, to get a program articulated and adopted by the opposite party. And then the opposite party brought in the people from this movement as mentors, reverse mentors to the government. And then they were voted out, and she became the digital minister of the country. So that is the sort of social change, social consensus that we can build for moments of trauma if we use these types of tools. Now, obviously, she's been working very hard on the ground doing these things. And she's also tried to articulate them. Next slide. But she articulates more in poetry than in prose. So this is her job description. She said that she wrote for herself, when we see the Internet of Things, let's make it an Internet of Beings. When we see virtual reality, let's make it a shared reality. When we see machine learning, let's make it collaborative learning. When we see user experience, let's make it about the human experience. And whenever we hear that the singularity is near, let us remember the plurality is here. Next slide. But of course, action is amazing, poetry is amazing, but people also need prose. They need things to put their hands on and grab so that they can do and build and extend. And so that's why we're writing this book together, along with hundreds of people around the world. Plurality, the future of collaborative technology and democracy. It will be digitally finalized in March, and thanks to the incredible work of our friend Aki Inori here and many others in the community, will be available. It's already available, most of the chapters, to people around the world. And then it will come out in print in traditional Mandarin and simplified Mandarin in June, and in English in June, and hopefully with your help in Japanese not far thereafter. Next slide. So what is plurality? The definition is technology to facilitate collaboration across social difference. So this is very much inspired by this idea from Star Trek. So in Star Trek, the Vulcans, who Audrey very much identifies with, have a philosophy that they call infinite diversity and infinite combination. This is the idea that all truth, beauty, and progress come from the union of things that are different. So this is symbolized here by a triangle uniting with a circle and giving birth to a diamond of light. This, to be a little bit more pedantic about it, next slide, you can think of this idea as coming from three great thinkers. So Hannah Arendt, one of the great philosophers of the 20th century, used the word plurality in her book, The Human Condition, to represent this idea, that the world is made up of diverse and intersecting social groups, not of individuals and society as a whole. That is, fundamentally, we should think of things in terms of networks, or hypergraphs would be the technical way to put it, rather than in terms of isolated individuals and then the society as a whole. Second, Danielle Allen, who I have a paper with that just came out yesterday, encourage you to take a look at it. It's in the Journal of Democracy. And she, in her paper on Towards Connected Society, built on this idea from Arendt to propose sort of a fundamental idea of political philosophy, which is that the engine driving societies forward is collaboration across social diversity. And that diversity is the fuel for that engine. So what do I mean by this? There's actually a very direct and tight analogy here to thermodynamics and how energy actually works. So if you think about what is it that is powerful about oil or about uranium or any of these things, it's that they're in a low entropy state. It's not that they have energy. If everything was just very hot, it would have a lot of energy. That's not powerful. What actually does work is when you have things separated, when something's hot here and cold here, when you have something that wants to react, but you stop it from reacting, and then you control the reaction. And of course, whenever that's the case, it's dangerous, right? Uranium can fission, bomb. Oil can explode and burn. But it can also fuel powerful work, right? And diversity, social diversity, is the same thing. That's the key idea behind this. Social diversity, yes, it can cause conflict, it can cause war, it can cause polarization, but it can also produce new things. It can produce innovation and progress and growth. And that is the key idea that Daniel Allen proposed, is that we should think about organizing politics around how do we harness, yes, avoid the explosion, but more importantly, harness for progress social diversity. And finally, what Audrey said in 2016 is that the central role of digital technology should be precisely to facilitate allowing us to do that better. To harness, to build the engines of the future, the more efficient engines, the more safe engines of harnessing diversity for progress. Okay, next slide. So, how do we do that? Well, there's this powerful analogy between the way that democracies work and the way that operating systems work that we want to draw on. So the basic fundamental idea behind liberal democracy is that there are these fundamental rights that people have that allow for a democracy to exist. If you can't know that there are individual people, then how can you have voting, right? If there's no notion of separate people, you can't vote, because voting is counting up people, right? So you need to have a notion of personhood and the sanctity of the person, or there's no way that democracy can exist. You can't, without people being able to form groups and political parties and associations. People can't act together to achieve things. You can't have democracy without that, right? So democracy is grounded on these fundamental rights. And in the same way, all applications of computers rely on an operating system. That's a common underlying base of code and assumptions that you have to build those applications on, and they draw on those things. And if you think about the way that the internet was imagined, as the shared set of protocols that we have, fundamentally that's a perfect fusion of the operating system and the idea of rights. It's this underlying set of affordances that all of our social interactions in the digital world can rely upon. But so far, that's only for like communication protocols and packet switching and maybe hypertext and things like this. And the vision of the founders of the internet, like J.C.R. Licklider, was that this would extend much further, that this would come to encompass the full sets of things that empower democracy and collaboration across diversity. Identity, technologies of privacy and association, of property and contract and asset sharing in the online world, and of commerce and payments and so forth. And so we believe that the foundation of allowing cooperation across difference in the digital age is to have this much more ambitious vision of what internet protocols are, to build open protocols that are shared and interoperable that empower this richer set of properties than we've currently built into the internet base layer. And then on top of that, next slide, we can build this broad range of applications of cooperation across difference. So what do I mean by applications? So there's a trade-off inherent in cooperation across difference. Because the deeper you cooperate with someone, the fewer people that can reach, right? You have the richest, deepest connections with people who are most similar to you, or at least a small number of people. And on the other hand, the things that reach the most people are the thinnest, the most basic forms of cooperation. And so one way we can see that is at present, there's this spectrum between like intimacy on the one hand and capitalism on the other hand. Capitalism connects almost everyone on the planet. And yet it's very thin. It's like money and these very commercial relationships. And then intimacy is this very, very deep thing, but usually it's just a couple of people who are participating in an intimate relationship, right? And you can in fact quantify this. You can think about the number of people who are participating versus the richness of the information they share. So when in capitalism, it's like this dollar amount, right, or yen amount, right? So it's a scalar. Voting is more like a vector of opinions you have on different things and in different organizations. Then there's structured language, like laws and things like this. Natural language in conversation. And then there's unisensory immersion, like you would have if you see like a film. There's multisensory immersion, like if you're at a party. And then there's, proprioception, your internal feeling of yourself. So proprioception is the idea, like if you close your eyes and stick out your arm, you know that your arm is out, even though none of your senses tell you that. It's not sight, smell, taste, but it's the internal sense of yourself. And in an intimate relationship, it's that thing that you begin to start to share with someone, right? And what plurality is all about is pushing back the trade-off between these things, allowing us to share more deeply, more broadly, reducing that trade-off. And so, for example, it's about making us able to have this type of conversation that I hope we all have, but with many more people. Or it's allowing us to have markets that take into account our social relationships. Or it's allowing us to go from our intimate relationships to ones where we can actually telepathically share with each other using things like brain-computer interface. So all those types of technologies, from the social technologies to brain-computer interface, AI, and all these things can be thought of as different points along this spectrum in this goal of pushing out the trade-off between depth and breadth of collaboration. Next slide. And we think that this range of things can transform so many domains of human life. This is, we talk about democracy, but this is about every part of life, not just the public sector. This is about the workplace, how we have remote work that really connects us powerfully to our teams, how we organize companies in ways that don't have to be hierarchical, but can instead allow people to form networks and collaborate differently. This is about reimagining the media by having more powerful ways to empathize with people across difference, by having ways of funding the media that support bridging people rather than dividing them. This is about the environment. This is about health. This is about the energy systems. This is about education and learning. All of these domains, we believe that these technologies can help transform. Next slide. And to do that, we need to draw on the lessons that were used to build the original internet. We're used to thinking of the private sector as the engine of technological progress, but the internet was built by the support of governments, by the engagement of the civil and academic sector, and with the integration in key scaling roles of the private sector, but not just the private sector driving the whole agenda. And that is possible today with work like what Audrey's been doing in Taiwan, with digital ministries, collaborating across countries on digital public infrastructure. And to Micah Tilleman, who is one of the top advisors to Vice President Biden when he was vice president, is writing the chapter that we're doing about all these policy issues, and at the same time, it's just announced he's leading one of the largest philanthropic efforts in the world around decentralization, Project Liberty by Frank McCourt in the United States. So next slide. And we need people from all sectors to participate and contribute. We have a Oscar-winning documentary filmmaker coming to Taipei with us next week to make a movie about Audrey Tong's life and to tell this story, to bring it home to people all around the world. There are legislatures around the world implementing quadratic voting to make decisions and resolve their issues. Great. And there are technology companies like Anthropic writing their constitutions using ideas like this. There are academics organizing around this, like Plurality Institute. Next slide. And the book itself is being written in a participatory way, and I hope many of you will join in us in doing this. It's an open public book. It's no copyrights. Everything is on Git. Anyone can make a PR and become part of the community, and all contributions will be credited formally, like in a DAO, but not with money. Instead, with community currency that allows you to govern and control the project. Next slide, using something that we call the Plural Management Protocol. And again, I'm running low on time, so I'll skip over this a little bit. Next slide. But I hope many of you will join in that, will contribute to the base text, will contribute to the translation in Japanese that Nishio is leading. Next slide. This uses all kinds of the mechanisms from the book, so we're building the book in a way that illustrates the book's ideas. Many of the book's ideas are going to be illustrated through the way the book is built. Next slide. And so I hope you'll join us. You can get a link to the website through that QR code. Thank you so much.
We had actually the talk about your coming books to translate them in Japanese.
Great. Wonderful.
Doing.
Yeah.
And actually there is one, maybe I think that just lost in translation in Japan about plurality itself.
Yeah.
It's not so common word in Japan.
Neither is it in English, really. It's
not
really.
And we often confuse with diversity and plurality.
Yeah.
But your great keynote sounds like maybe plurality is a kind of technology tool for making diversity. Is that right? Yeah,
so I hope you guys will find, and I'm sure much better than I can ever imagine, a word in Japanese, or characters in Japanese, or kanji in Japanese, or whatever, something that captures what I tried to capture in English with plurality. But it's the Chinese that it comes from, right? That's the original. It's the digital and plural are the same thing in traditional Mandarin. I hope you find a way to capture this well in Japanese. But plurality is not a common word in English either. So it's a little bit new, it's a little bit tech, it's a little bit social philosophy, it's both. That's the spirit that it's trying to capture, is that there's technology that makes diversity work.
I see.
You know what I mean?
So now we will implementing the meaning of the plurality now, just everyone.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. So let's move to it's a really great keynote, and we're now going to talk about the examples in Japan, and we have two leading players for implementing plurality for our society. So could we just introduce a bit about the most?
That's great, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. So Tasaka-san, could you go first, and then anytime you could ask anything.
Yeah, absolutely.
Again, thank you so much for being here.
It's my honor.
Yeah, it's very inspiring. And my name is Yoshiro Tasaka. I work for the Shibuya City office. And by the way, Shibuya's slogan, we have a slogan that's 違いを力に means like a diversity empowers the city and the people.
Exactly.
So
That's exactly. So maybe some version of this should be the title of the book in Japanese.
But thank you. Yeah. Well, so Shibuya is known as a center of cultures, but 19 years ago we are nothing. It's just one of the rural areas in Tokyo. But since then we get like a lot of people from outside of Japan and like a mix of the different regions people, and also after the war U.S. base is here, and then like a Chinese American, Japanese American, and those people create like a diverse cultures, and that's how Shibuya was created. And then what I do is I'm running these innovation divisions for the last 4 years, and then I try to create a platform of the innovations. For example, like we started a startup visa to bring entrepreneurs from outside of Japan, and then like you are welcome to use that startup visa to come to.
I'm getting my gold card in Taiwan.
Yeah,
next
Taiwan
week,
has
so,
it.
yeah.
Oh, you're getting it.
Yeah, there's
great,
actually
great
there's
system.
going to be a ceremony in two weeks from today in
Really?
Taiwan for me to get this card.
Yeah, and those of you who don't know about Gold Card, it's a creation of digital agency of Taiwan's, and then you can apply right now, and then you can go to Taiwan. Anyway, so yeah, but I used to work for the big corporations, startups, central governments. Now I work for the city, and then the city means like I implement policy to the people.
Yeah.
And then now I realize a lot of the issues we have, and then I hope that your philosophy and technologies and the people here is super encouraging the right-wing talks, speakers. It's wonderful, and then I hope we can do something really new.
Well, how many people live in Shibuya?
Between 230,000 people.
Okay, perfect. So in the book, we have this argument. We say, what's the right scale for plural innovation to start? Well, on the one hand, you want diversity within. Because if you don't have diversity within, how can you show that the engine works? But on the other hand, you want diversity across. Because otherwise, you can't have a diversity of innovations. So we argue that the best, the optimal scale is sort of like what we call the square root scale, which is to say that there should be as many of the units of that size in the world as there are people within that unit. And the square root of 10 billion, about 10 billion people in the world, is 100,000. So city is kind of very good scale for plural innovation, right? So Shibuya, great fit for us, right?
Sounds good. And I hope we all can do something together.
Yeah, let's do the kind of experimental.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Project together. I want to pass to.
Thank you.
Arisna.
So, okay, let's move from city to the kind of rural communities.
Yeah.
Could you show up my slide? Could you? Oh, okay. Alright, so I'm Atsu Hayashi. Thank you for coming today. And very important holiday for Japanese people. Okay, so we're currently working on this Lukaku project with an idea of creating the local government itself from scratch. And as you know, guys, it is said that by 2040, half of local government disappear in Japan. And as the population decline and the ages and tax revenue are declining, also social security costs will continue to rise. So it's clear that it's difficult for local government themselves to continue to provide public service and system in their current state. But if it's a large city like Shibuya, I think it will be effective to take approach of reforming the local government. But given that more than half of the 1,700 local government, those are quite small, and with less than 30,000 people, elderly people, and so-called depopulation area. So I don't think there's much point in changing them. So rather than that, I think it would be better if everyone could just create a new local government, or like create something like a second government. So here we are creating the local government from scratch by using the blockchain, the crypto technology, such as like could you use next. Okay, so this is a small village in the deep mountain. This is the Tsukigase area. It's only 1,200 people living. And the next, and there's a beautiful fisherman's place. It's only 300 people, and and over 60% of population over 65 years old, and there are over 100 vacant houses. So that's what happening in the rural area in Japan. Yeah.
Can I mention a couple things about that? So first of all, do you know John Dewey? Have you ever read John Dewey?
No.
So The Public and Its Problems is one of my favorite books of all time. John Dewey is, in the book, one of the real patron saints of plurality. And actually, I learned that he's very important to why plurality has been so successful in Taiwan. Because it turns out that John Dewey came and visited China during the revolution. And he, one of his students, Hushi, have you guys heard of Hushi? He was the founder of Academia Sinica, and he was one of the, the great intellectual advisors to Sun Yat-sen. And he built the whole Taiwanese education system when the nationalists came to Taiwan. And he built it around the principles of John Dewey, who is considered the greatest American educator. But he was also one of the greatest American political philosophers. And this book, The Public and Its Problems, is very, very relevant for you. So what Dewey said in Public and Its Problems is that whenever there's new technologies, people become interdependent in new ways. The coal makes the coal mining regions and the factories work together. The radio brings people who didn't talk to talk. Every new technology creates new interdependence. And so he said, if we are going to have democracy, democracy does not mean nation states with some old electoral system. Democracy means that when people are affected by something, that they can control the thing that affects them. It means self-government. And so he said, democracy is dying. And democracy is dying because of technology. Technology will always kill democracy unless you find new ways that the new forms of interdependence can be governed by the people who are affected by them. And this is what's happening with you.
Yes, exactly.
You know what I mean?
So those people are used to do the self-governance, But once, in Japan, the local government happens almost 120 years ago. Then, we got so people started to outsourcing the local governance to the local government. So they kind of forget how to control their own land and how to keep the community, those kind of etc. That's what's happening in Japan.
So this John Dewey thing, this is 1927, very old problem, but it's very relevant for us today. And no one ever solved this problem because still it's nation states, it's these old jurisdictions. But technology is so much faster than this. Demographic change, so much faster than this. And we need to find a way to make those jurisdictions keep up with the pace of that. Because if it doesn't, democracy ends. Democracy is not something that needs to be protected, it's something that needs to be created anew every day. Because if it isn't, it just dies. It dies naturally because it needs that updating all the time.
Yes. So here's an interesting story. So this is my opinion. If I could choose a country like a web service, I wouldn't choose Japan. Taiwan looks like a better to me. However, looking at the history of the cooperative movement in Europe is fascinating, which is like Spain's Mondragon or Faircope, etc. I think it's the same in Japan, because I recently discussed with about the local group with the member of the National Diet, and he said that was funny. He said, "Okay, doing this centrally will be cool, but locally, it's innovation. Okay, go ahead, That's he said. So it's we're changing a lot. So with the rapid population decline and aging, the crumbling local administration system. So there's a very big chance. So we can create a new government or a new world in rural Japan. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, it makes total sense. And you know, Audrey often calls herself a conservative anarchist, and that sounds like a contradiction. But one thing I've really learned from Audrey and from the tradition of the Tao Te Ching and Taoism is that often, because the world is complex, it's in contradictions that we find the truth. Because to express something simply is almost always to express it wrong. And to express it in a complicated way is almost always incomprehensible. So it's only in paradox that you are always led to ask more questions. And I think the paradox that she got right about conservative anarchism is if we value not just people, but also social groups, if we believe in plurality, then we have to, at the same time, be innovating, but be innovating to lift up the truth and the wisdom of those local traditions, of the richness of those local traditions, and not allow them to be papered over by, bureaucracy. That we need to find a way to empower that more using the innovations, and that's the spirit that I think you're trying to manifest.
Wow, thank you very much. And the one thing I saw is just when you contribute to the Wired, maybe 2 years ago, that's about how people kind of going the wrong way about the decentralization. It's kind of to compare with Web3 and the pluralities. And it's, because you mentioned about technology, just we will use technology with that local social context.
Yeah.
Why, how to weekly implement that, the technology of plurality, not necessarily Web3. How could you explain about the difference between that?
So let me get a little bit nerdy to be just very concrete. The way that a blockchain is conceived is that it's a global, public, open ledger that is available to everyone. And then people put some privacy technology on top of this to protect the individual privacy. So it's public and private. That's the vision.
So just it's a dichotomy, so the two.
Yeah. I think this is the wrong way to think about information governance. There's a great quote from Alexander de Tocqueville. He was a Frenchman who was an observer of American society.
Yeah.
And he said that the tyrant is very happy for people to be selfish, as long as they hate each other. It's fine if they also hate him, because what he fears is that people love each other, because then they can do things.
Yeah.
And what we need is not individual privacy. What we need is diverse social groups. We need many publics. We need not public things or private things. We need many different publics. And each of those publics need to have protection against other people looking in on them, because otherwise they lose their integrity. So we need privacy, but we also need them to come to a shared understanding within them, because otherwise we don't have that public. So the problem with blockchain is that it thinks about this binary rather than about the creation of many different social communities that are empowered to protect themselves and to act together, because that is democracy. That the essence of democracy is not about individuals. They're a part of it. But the essence of democracy is about empowered sets of people who can collectively act outside of the state to achieve their common ends.
Wow, that's a great statement. Yeah. What do you think, Tasaka-san, about this?
Yeah, I was thinking about the case of Shibuya. For example, like our Shibuya is very unique in terms of demographics. Most of the Japanese cities, like Hayashi-san's helping, is super aging societies, right? And then versus Shibuya is like, our largest population is the 20s to 50s. So it means like active workers are here, but still the voice is very small. And then our seniors more stronger probably than our active ages. So and then like I think their interest is kind of very simple, like take care of me, right? And then like and then so don't take care of like younger people. They're okay. They're but like. What you say is probably like using technology might change the kind of like if we allow those. I really care about my elderlies, but if we listen to them, we probably cannot leave anything to the future generations. And then like how we can avoid that is like we have to change the decision making process, or we can protect somehow the seniors' interest. But what you're saying is maybe we respect seniors, but those seniors, not only in Shibuya, but different worlds, somehow, I don't know, like can.
And we bridge the difference between them. And I was at MaraiCon yesterday. Those of you who have not been to MaraiCon here, you have a treasure in this country. It is the most wonderful physical space for plurality I've ever been to. I was so honored to be there. And they have an exhibit about aging that I think I'm going to use as an example in the book, because it puts people in the position of the elderly. It makes them see what they see. Technology can help us not make such a divide between these things. It can make us, for example, there's this thing quadratic funding, which maybe some of you know about. It's a way of, if many different people contribute to something, that it gets support from the public. Maybe we can make projects that get quadratic funding, but across age groups. So if the elderly and the young both find a solution good, then that's the right solution to pursue, right? And these exhibits can make the young people understand what it is about how they live that is challenging for the elderly. And on the other hand, the elderly maybe can learn a different way to allow participation from other people. So most systems, 18 you get the vote. 18. What happened at 18? Nothing. It's just some day that was written down. What about instead people gradually accrue voting rights as they get older? And we have people vote to different extents. What if the immigrants come and the day they begin to get some voting rights, but of course people who are there longer have accumulated more? What if, one reason why you don't have the young vote is that you think their parents just tell them what to do? What if you have some quadratic voting thing that accounts for the extent to which you are part of different social groups rather than just your parents? So there are lots of ways that with smart design, we don't have the fight of the old and the young. We have the common cooperation of the old and the young together to make things that work for all of them, so that we honor all the different sides of the conversation.
Thank you. Maybe we'll just implement that, experiment in the Shibuya world.
Yeah, wonderful.
Let's do it. Then I almost at the time, but I would ask you about what do you think about local group actually, the highest things, because you mentioned maybe about the just one of the plurality is how to make composable local controls.
Yes, absolutely.
And this local group is actually kind of trying to the second government in the local area. And what did you think about that? And
Yeah.
what's the possibility?
So I didn't want to go on too long before, but I think a very natural way to do this is exactly what I was saying. So I said old and young maybe is the conflict here, but different local municipalities is the problem for you. It's fragmented. So what if you had a quadratic funding system for the creation of new authorities? So if different local governments get together and they put money into a common project, the federal government, the national government, provides some matching funds for this. And so new authorities can emerge from the existing authorities with the support of the national level. So, I mean, they do things like this in a very clunky way by fiat. I don't know if you've heard about the West Midlands Authority in the UK, but they created a new authority for several of the cities because it was depopulation and so forth. But you could allow this to emerge in a decentralized way with the support of the national level.
Cool. Is anybody from people from national government? Yeah, that's a nice idea. Yeah, great. Oh, yeah. That's your role.
But that's great. Another great idea. So we will implement that
Yes,
to
yeah.
and that area. Thank you very much. So now that maybe you're kind of running out of your time, but maybe we could.
Yeah, we should take
of
some
the
questions from the audience,
It's a
absolutely.
great opportunity. So yes, that's camp guy. Could you come? Is that okay?
Yeah, come up. Here, I'll bring you the mic.
Thank you for your discussion. It was pretty interesting for me.
画面に映る。そうそうそう。まだね。そうそうそう。
My pleasure.
Musical chairs, we say.
My pleasure. I have a question about one. So first thing, not like a question. I just asking you to. Could you sign my book?
Of course.
Yeah, I have one. So
Happy after this if people want things to sign.
okay, thank you so much.
Yeah.
So
or selfie or whatever.
Okay, yeah. Thank you so much. That's not a question.
Yeah.
So, my question is, so you said like you have like an ideal scale of democracy. You said like a
200,000.
200,000, yeah. And then I saw some books about like a Greek like a democracy, ancient Greek democracy. So some centuries ago. So and then they say like the size of the democracy or the size of the diet in Greek was like about 200,000, I guess.
Yeah.
So I have a question about how do you find ancient like a Greek democracy, and do you have any question, or so sometimes we should like learn from history, and then history says like something that's true.
So I think that 100,000 is a great scale for innovation. But of course things have to scale above that and they have to scale below that in order for it's just a very good site for things to be tried out for the first time. Like Greek democracy was an experiment. Very interesting experiment. We learned some things from it. We need to learn more. We need to go further. You shouldn't get stuck on this.
Yeah.
You know, the bad way to honor an innovator is to treat them like a god. The good way to honor an innovator is to emulate them, is to say, I can be like that. You go to the Jefferson Memorial in the United States, and you'll see on the wall that he says that every 30 years the Constitution needs to be rewritten. And then you go to the people who admire Thomas Jefferson in the United States, and they don't want to touch the Constitution at all. So that's a paradox, right? You read the words of Jesus Christ, you read the words of Lao Tzu, and then you see the way that those things are practiced today. And people should emulate. They should not write in stone, you know? And that's, yes, we should learn from the Greek democracy, but should we do Greek democracy today? No. We should push forward like they pushed forward in the same way today, you know?
that's what it is. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. And so that's.
Yeah.
Thank you for the discussion. I have a question.
Yeah.
You position digital democracy among the other two branches,
Yeah.
synthetic technocracy
Yeah.
and corporate libertarianism. And by virtue of that, I do think that there's trade-offs to all of them. Like synthetic technocracy would have issues with, basic human rights or equality, or corporate libertarianism with the gap between capital, yada yada. And what would you say that the trade-off for digital democracy is? For example, not to mention, I think a pretty obvious one is the introduction of significant complexity for participating individuals. Another one could be, it makes it easier for certain interest groups to participate, obviously, but that in itself, whether that's like an entirely good thing is a, macroscopically itself, I think is worthy of a discussion. And so what are the sort of expected hardships of trying to achieve digital democracy, and how would you say that, your organization or, in Taiwan, or I think the best question is for us, individuals to sort of see that and overcome that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Hannah Arendt once said that one of the greatest freedoms is the freedom from politics. And incorrectly conceived or incorrectly pursued, democracy is the tyranny of politics, right? It's everyone having to constantly be thinking about things that are very far from their experience, but that they're being called upon to consider as some political issue. So the correct conception that I would have is actually not democracy exactly. It's plurality. It's many different scales of interaction with many different technologies, empowering all those things to simultaneously exist, and that the one person, one vote image of democracy, the political equality image of democracy, is not the right way to conceive of it. There's two different ways to be opposed to ranking people in some order. One way is equality. That reduces the dimensions. It takes them in order and puts it down. The better way, I think, is to say there are many more dimensions. And so there is no way to rank because it's more complex than that. So the real vision, honestly, of the democracy word is one that people can grab a little bit. So we talk about it, but really it's not democracy. It's plurality that is the right way to conceive it. So yeah.
I completely agree, but what do you think about the fact that in reality, a lot of people, probably in this country especially, but in many other democratic countries, people find it hard to even go write a person's name every few years. That's a very simple thing to do, and even that's not people don't feel the need to participate and commit to that, right?
Yeah.
So how would you even expect people to participate and commit to an added complex society, which ideally, theoretically, would help navigate this multidimensionality that we have? But
well, I think we need to meet people where they are, and people where they are is often expressing themselves on many things. Every time you go to a store, every time you have an experience in the street, every time you have a problem with the metro, you think something. So how do we take those thoughts and make it easy for them in natural language to then eventually translate into decisions that are socially acted upon? And the answer is some combination of, what's usually called AI, having natural language models that can learn those things, that can build a model of how you'd like to express your preferences quantitatively using some model, and tools that allow the expressions to translate into action in a thoughtful way, whether it be quadratic voting or some more sophisticated version of that, or even natural language processing based collective decision making, things that can directly take those natural language and translate them to something. So that's we're losing all that information. You would talk about how hard it is to write down the name. Yes, but people are expressing things all the time, and we're losing it.
So there is a possibility that this plural way of living might actually come more naturally to people as a whole than actually writing down a name every few years.
That's what we want. The writing down a name a few years is like some bureaucratic Weber 19th century thing. of structure that we put on to people who were governing themselves and living in many different ways. And technology might free us from the need to have this very rigid structure and might allow us to live in those more natural and diverse social patterns. That would be a great success, I think.
Thank you. Cool.
Yeah. Before we go, is there a woman who'd like to ask a question? Because I know a very important thing in Japan is that we have more inclusion, and this is a challenge here on this panel as well. So if there's, I'd like to actively encourage if there's a woman who has a question to answer that they come up and join us.
みんな首を振ってますがぜひ。
Hey,
Hey.
I think I'm a diversity woman.
Yeah.
Thank you. But this is not the question, but I want to know. Could you please describe about what is the bad about the blockchain? You said blockchain is open, ledger, and also we put on the privacy.
Yeah.
But I could not get that is not the right way to approach.
Yeah.
You mentioned, but
Yeah.
I could not get. So could you please
So,
repeat again, please?
let me describe an alternative structure that I'm not saying is the optimal one, but it gives you a sense of what you might go for that's different from a blockchain.
Mhm.
So this is an idea I've been developing recently that we call a designated verifier chain. So what this is it's a group of people who have, there's something called a designated verifier signature. So a designated verifier signature is a way of sending a message where the people who you send the message to can know that you sent it, but no one else other than that person, even if that person wants to share it, can know that you actually sent that message. So this is a way to stop when you send a message that person from sharing it with anyone else.
All right.
Right.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so imagine a community of people who share a common ledger, but they can't prove to anyone outside of that community what that ledger says. Without that community collectively
Yes.
adding that other person to the ledger.
All right.
So that would be a data structure that creates collective privacy.
Interesting.
And it creates, it prevents double spend within the community. But outside the community, no one can ever verify non-double spend, and therefore the money is not worth anything to anyone outside the community, right?
Right.
So that gives you a sense of an alternative to a blockchain that uses some similar tools, but in a different combination that grounds itself in the notion of community rather than in the notion of money. You see what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, wow. Thank you so much. But I also have a question.
Yeah,
So is that kind of the approach some startup or some people already creating some application kind of thing?
Yeah, there's absolutely various things going on, in the space and the plurality. There's Radical Exchange, which is a network of all the people building things like this, and there's, I run a research group at Microsoft that does things like this as well. So absolutely, there are developments going on in that direction, but there's always many more to do. And I say that in the more singularity visions, there's like the truth, and you're digging down to the truth. You're like on the earth, and you're digging down to the truth, and you hit the core of the truth, and you throw away falsehood. In plurality, you're on the surface of the earth, and you're planting trees, and the trees, as they grow up, they grow out, and there's more space, right? So the further you go, the more space there is. And so that's right. The more we innovate, the more we advance, the more there is to do. Not people have already done it. You know what I mean? So yeah. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Thank you.
pleasure.
That's a great example.
Thank you very much.
Almost 3, but do you still have a time to just have a...
Yeah, I'd have maybe one. Yeah, we should probably go pretty soon, but I'll take maybe one
Okay,
other
1 or
question.
2.
And then, yeah.
Yes, if someone... Is that... Okay, yes.
Yeah.
Hello, thank you.
Yeah.
So this is kind of slightly different topic, but I'm a filmmaker.
Yeah.
So Bali, just a very short question. I'm curious about the film you mentioned being made.
Absolutely.
Can you tell us who the...
Yeah, so the director is Cynthia Wade. She's an Oscar-winning documentary maker. And then there's there's the producer is Terry Whitcraft, who's an Emmy-winning former ABC News producer. And it's going to be, our aspiration is the first CC0 Git-based, fully open source film. And so everything will be available for people to remix as they choose.
Great.
So, yeah.
That answers another question I had, but I was also just asking, around the time of like radical markets and radical exchange starting, you talked a lot about artists and needing to imagine the future that these kind of technologies could bring into being. I just wondered if, so you had mentioned Civilization game as a good example. I haven't played it. I just wondered if you had any other examples of like, because you can imagine kind of someone who has architectural vision for the future. It's very easy to kind of imagine how, as a filmmaker, you can put that in the world of the film and people can kind of see and feel it without, in a kind of natural way of a story. But that's a bit harder to imagine in the case of, at least for me, in the case of kind of democratic mechanisms and this kind of complicated technological new technologies. And I just wonder if there's any other examples of that you're really inspired by?
Ruthana Emrys's book, A Half-Built Garden, is a great example. Star Trek is the best example of all this stuff. Mirai Khan is number 2. Really, Mirai Khan is wonderful. But Star Trek is fabulous. Star Trek is an entire world. It's not just has this Vulcan philosophy. The whole narrative arc of Star Trek is not about good and evil. It's about people who are different, figuring out how to be allies, overcoming barriers of communication, overcoming cultural barriers. That is the drama of Star Trek. That's a wonderful story to tell, you know, and that's plurality in action, you know. But you know, the mechanisms are only one thing. The spirit of what is being done is what matters, and the mechanisms can be alluded to because they help achieve this, you know, because they and you know, we do that, and in many of the chapters of this book begin with stories by Noah Yet, who's one of the people on that first slide, about a world with these things. But what matters is not the mechanism. What matters is that in this world, rather than you pay with money, you find a better way that I make an introduction of a friend and you are a guest in my house. You know? And that technology facilitates that. But what matters is that I don't use the money. I use my relationships. You know? What matters is that in this future, we have media that tell inclusive stories, and that there's support for that. And yeah, there's some economic mechanism behind that, but you don't need to describe the mechanism. What you need to describe is the media and the way that it works, you know? But yes, there are other examples. Ursula Le Guin is a wonderful example of things like this. So I think there are not enough. There are never enough. But there are good examples. Richard Garfield, the creator of Magic the Gathering, is making games about many of these ideas that include them in the dynamics of the game. And Civilization 6 not just has these things, but also the voting in that is quadratic voting. So that's showing millions of people every day what quadratic voting is. So, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So far, we in Japan, let's go to the behind countries. It's a great example.
Yeah, and hopefully when we come back this summer, we do something with your icon. That would be wonderful. Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, thank you very much. So, Takagi-san, what? Yeah, maybe.
Are you gonna take it? Thank you for coming, everyone. So the talk session was ended like this.
Yeah.
Also, I'm just curious about does Glen gonna be coming to next July to Japan?
Yeah, so I'm going to be in Taipei for a week, and so we'll do something in Japan. We'll figure out how to make it all coordinate. We gotta figure out the best way to do it. But let's bring the message to everyone, and let's really make a difference here, and with all of you as the leaders. And I hope many of you, the way the book tour is going to work is that yes, Audrey and I will go, but also the people who are writing the book, the people who are doing the books in local communities, they will talk, and we're going to have thousands of people, I hope, around the world doing the book tour.
Like this.
Yeah.
Like this session is going to be more.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So, wait. I just want an announcement about funding the Commons Tokyo. We are preparing by Plurality Tokyo and the DAO Tokyo. Funding the Commons is one of the event of the. Maybe you guys has interest about like this event. FTC is the more bigger, and huge like this. So, yeah, maybe the Glen is gonna be coming here.
Let's try to find the week that we do this and the week that we do it. You want to come?
Yeah,
come Viv.
It's actually the same week. We're doing like Polarity Summit, July 27th. So in Taipei, we're also doing Polarity Summit, July 27th. So if you guys are interested in any of the concepts Glen just mentioned, come to Taiwan on July 27th. And it's like gonna be the same week as Funding Commons Tokyo. So like right after Tokyo, we can do.
Well, let's figure it out. You guys should all talk this
Yes.
We should figure out.
Anyway, so thank you for the coming, Glen Weyl. Breeze. Thank you, Glen. Thank you. Alright, so after he leave, we're gonna take a photo with everyone. So if you wanna don't into the photo, go ahead. Alright, so coming here, everyone. Yes, こっち側へ。写真写りたくない人は、外側へお願いします。
これスター大丈夫？まだ誰か空いてます。
これで撮るとこれでいけるんだけどね。ちょっとやってもらって。これで撮ろうか。でもまだ長い。じゃあ僕が撮る。これは作る。でももういいでしょ。もうこれ切っちゃっていい。切りましょうか。切りましょう。でちょっと切っちゃって。これで撮っちゃう。これでタイマーで撮ればいいでしょ。入る。